little girl, did you want to know a secret?
I got 5 on it. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rumi, the comic book poser, and I'm here today to welcome you to Enter the Poserverse. It's Thursday, which means I go live, and sometimes I have stuff to talk about, sometimes it's just me jibber-jabbering. But tonight, I'm excited to have another guest with an upcoming book from Mad Cave Studios. But before we talk about that, you might have seen all over my social media today, at the end of school today, I decided that I wanted to do something for a 750 subscriber giveaway until I hit, instead of waiting until I, hit 1,000 and could stockpile a bunch of stuff. So if you look at either the video that I shared, or if you go back to my main YouTube page, you'll see it linked to the top. If and when I hit 750 subscribers, I will give away a 9.2 copy of Hotel from AWA Studios. And if I can get to 750 subscribers by February the 16th, and the video will tell you why, I'll give away 2 copies. If not, I get to keep one for myself, but I would rather give them away to you all. So I'm excited today to be able to interview another Mad Cave Talent Search winner from the class of 2019. I'm now one author away from collecting the entire set, and I feel like I should earn some kind of pin for that. But I'm very excited to talk to David Hazan, who is the author of the upcoming book Nottingham. And seeing that superimposed over my head is going to give me some nightmares when I take my insomnia medicine tonight, but it is what it is. So we were going back and forth in the chat that David and I had before the show, if I wanted to wait to show this video before he came on or not. But if you're not aware, Mad Cave Studios has started releasing trailers, some video shorts for some of their books, the Inside the Cave segment where you can see the artist doing some of their work on the book, and there are 2 or 3 Inside the Cave episodes dedicated to this book where you can see Shane Volk, the artist, who is also a talent search winner, doing some work on Nottingham. But I figured the best way to get us all properly in the right headspace and hype for what I think is going to be one hell of an insane ride, here's the trailer. If that does not get you excited, there is something wrong with you, and I will share with you my therapist's number. But I'm very excited to invite into the stream 2019 Mad Cave Talent Search winner, and according to Jared Lahan, the author of Dryfoot, the most beautiful man in Australia, David Hazan.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome. I'm excited to be able to sit down and talk with you like we've gone back and forth on Instagram. I'm a big fan of the book, but I figure before we talk about the book, since this is your first release through a publisher in the States. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are inside of the world of comics?
Sure. So I guess that kind of says it all in that this is actually my first real full-length comics release ever. But I got into comics about 2 and a bit years ago, like just before I won the Mad Cave Talent Search. So I've been working hard on this since then, and some other shorts that are sort of either I've put up on my website and on Twitter, or are coming in the near future from there's one Australian publisher who I'm working with, and some other stuff which I'll be self-publishing.
Nice. So did you do any kind of other writing before you moved into comics, or has this always been the goal?
Yeah, I've been a writer for as long as I can remember, really, and I've always been one of those people who has like a million short stories and unfinished novels just sitting sort of on a hard drive somewhere. But comics is a relatively new thing for me, and I kind of fell into it and just kind of things snowballed is the word I'm looking for. I'm supposed to be the one with the words. It's sometimes very hard.
I definitely can relate to that as someone who has to teach kids about speech.
Yeah, it kind of snowballed from me being pushed into comics by some colleagues to me going, oh, this is great. I want to keep doing this. Like, I want to make this, you know? But yeah, I've always been a writer. I have a degree in writing. Up until very recently, I've been a professional legal writer at a big publisher for about 4 or 5 years. So writing has always been the thing that I've been doing. It's comics that has been the more recent thing for me.
So are you a comic fan? Do you read comics before all of this, or did you just dive into the world head first?
I think it's almost impossible to write comics with any effectiveness without having done some reading. Um, so it all started when a colleague of mine pushed me to buy a copy of Batwoman Elegy, and that book is just not only phenomenal, but it's also gorgeous. And I tore through that, and I was like, oh, like you have this kind of I'm home moment, I think, and that was only about 2 or 3 years ago, and since then I've just been tearing through the stuff that some of the stuff that's kind of like the canon, like all of your like Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, just Neil Gaiman, all of that stuff I've been tearing, but I've also just kind of been picking and choosing what I've liked, and it's really hard to, I guess, try to play catch up, especially when writing becomes the priority over reading.
I like Oregon.
So yeah, it's kind of been this like tumbling into comics over the last 3 odd years.
Yeah, well, I'm about the same. That I read comics when I was a kid, and then busy in high school and college, and it fell to the back burner, and I've been back in the game for a year, and I fully agree that it's real hard to play catch up. And the moment you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to get into comics, and everybody and their mother is like, you got to read this, and you feel like you have a reading list that's this long. But I agree. So you said that this is your first kind of full-length comic, and on your website, I read through today Love Harder, and if you all go to his website, which is linked in the description below, I'm just going to kind of scroll through this so you can see the style of the 4-page short. But this to me is a very, very powerful like statement on like 2 or 3 different very broad emotions. And I think this is an instance where, you know, it's almost reading like a 5-7 line poem where you're like, I don't know how I can be moved by something that short, but in Love Harder, you do a lot to make a profound statement. So I guess before we transition into talking about the talent search and Nottingham, what was your source of inspiration for a story like this? And was it a challenge to reduce something so grandiose into something so small?
Before I get to the answer to that question, I should absolutely mention J. Paul Sheik, who is the artist on that, who is phenomenal. It was a short we originally did for a short comics competition. I had an artist already who had pulled out, and Jay produced those pages in 8 hours, which is
You're kidding me.
dead serious. 8 hours.
Wow.
I was like, dude, do not do this. You're not gonna. You're just gonna kill yourself for no reason. And he's like, no, man, I'm doing it. And I'm like, all right, you offered. I did not ask you to do this.
Yeah.
And 8 hours later, he handed me back the pages, and I lettered them, and we submitted it. We didn't get anywhere in the short comics competition, but I think we made something that really actually says something. And it's interesting that you mentioned poetry, because I think that's, for short comics, that's where I kind of feel like I find my inspiration, is that I try to make it visual poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And like taking the essence of, I took basically there are sort of a few interconnected ideas that go into it, but I think the one thing that I wanted to talk about was just my feelings on the bury your gays trope.
Okay.
And there's a lot of interconnectedness because we've sort of come in storytelling further than we've furthered the needle a bit, right? Where we have good representation that is positive representation.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there's sort of a race is attached in some way to that nexus of that trope. And so while you may get a lot of stories about white Anglo queer folk who which end in a positive way, the same I don't think can always be said for queer people of color. And so that was sort of, it's a whole lot of stuff packed into this one idea about how queer storytelling ends.
Well, and I think one of the reasons I could relate to that is in coaching competitive speech, I have a lot of queer people of color on my squad, and they're like, can you help me find something that I can relate to from my standpoint? And it's like, no, like there's no happy, or there are few happy, like queer people of color stories, that it's all, like you said, buried in this trope of bury your gays. And I think like everybody should go read this. If you click on the comics work tab of his website, you can A, sign up for his newsletter, which you should do, and B, download this 4-page comic. Because like I said, I don't think I'm now shocked anymore by the kinds of things that I get emotionally moved by. Like I cried at a picture of a house in a Scout comic a couple of weeks ago. Like at the 4 pages of this, I just kind of sat here at the end of my day like, why am I feeling all of these things? And it was just a very good experience. And like Jared said, it's dope. The last question I'll ask you before we kind of move into the becoming a professional comics writer side of things, give us a little taste of who David is outside of the world of comics. You gave us a little bit of you're a legal writer. which
Uh,
if that stuff is as arduous to write as it is to read, as someone who does a lot of like political science research, what do you do for excitement beyond this?
Well, I have a horrible obsession with TV, which I think, like has built my storytelling skills in that I watch a lot of great TV and I watch a lot of trash that I find enjoyable. And I think like part of what makes my brain discerning on story is that I can say, this is terrible, but these are the things I like in it and these are the things I hate in it.
Yep, I can relate to that.
Yeah, so I watch an amount of television that no human should ever really in their life. Beyond that, so I said I was a legal writer. I now transitioned back into practicing law as a fully fledged lawyer. I went to publishing and I came back. Thanks, COVID, but but I'm finding that I guess enjoying that more than I did before. I think part of that is like having found comics as this like great creative outlet that I can, I'm enjoying both things more as a result, which is great.
That makes sense because you can satisfy your need to write, but then practicing law has also got to be its own kind of rush from time to time, from the research, figuring out your angle in particular cases and go those kinds of things. So it's nice. It's a good balance. You are now the first lawyer author. I've had an engineer and a chemist, and so it's interesting to see the amount of people who you're like, I don't know, those two parts of the brain don't seem to communicate all the time, that you've got a good intersection of those two things.
And I think that lawyering, there's a certain element of it that is telling a damn good story, like especially when it comes to like setting out claims. You just have to tell the story in such a way that somebody can absorb it and absorb particularly the side, your client's side of the story, so they get that from their perspective.
Nice. Before we talk about the talent search, we'll say hi to the chat real fast. We have somebody else on your side of the time zone line. We've got my buddy K Titus from Japan. Cyborg Dad, thanks for swinging in. Same thing with Symbiote Comics. We've got the king of the Peanut Butter Squad. Thank you for showing up. We've got who might be the nicest person that I see comment on everybody's content on YouTube next to, or in addition to K Titus, Kenneth Bird. Thank you. Let's see. We're also on Facebook as well. So hello, Dubois Gates. We already said hello to Jared in Oregon. We've got my guy Average Will in the house. We've got Nick from the Comic Burrito. Thank you for swinging in. And then I feel like this is a good, fun transition from another one of your fellow talent search winners, David on Comics. I want to make visual poetry. Me, I want to blow stuff up. That's very funny. And I like how it's a good contrast. Like now, Jared, as you are writing Mexicans with swords, I expect to find some visual poetry in all of that. So there's where David has raised the bar for you.
Oh, we can do both. We can do both,
I think there might be some elements of both. And well, I guess you don't get to blow stuff up yet in Nottingham, but it's here's visual poetry of people being stabbed in all kinds of epic ways.
Yes, there is a lot of that.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Mad Cave Talent Search, as I drop my phone, one of the things that they ask writers to do is to take one of the existing Mad Cave properties and write a short in that universe. So which Mad Cave property did you pick, and why did you choose that one?
I chose Battle Cats, and it was entirely because this story popped into my head about people getting stabbed in a visually poetic manner. So, none of them really spoke to me at first as like, I want to write this. But what happened was I had just in my journey into comics, I had just read Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and I was like very deeply affected by that story, and just the kind of like the weird fatalism of it, where it was like just almost oppressively sad despite the wink and the nod at the end. It was just like the most of it was almost oppressively sad, but you couldn't kind of stop reading it.
Nice.
It was like a train wreck that made you cry.
I really think one of the things Mad Cave should do, because I know they're doing an anthology with this year's talent search winners, like they're writing like horror stuff. I really want to see what y'all's submissions look like, because everybody is becoming more familiar with all of the broader Mad Cave titles, and like I want to see what your Battle Cat story looked like, or what Liesel's Midnight Task Force story looked like. Like, I think those would be good, like one shots to keep some of those stories that are either fully done or on ice relevant. And I think it becomes kind of the good fun showcase for what made them kind of choose you over the rest of the pool. The most utterly cliche question: how did you feel the moment you found out you were a winner?
Well, I had like woken up very early, completely by accident. Looked at my phone, saw the email, went, "Oh, okay," went back to sleep. Then when I woke up a few hours later, I was like, very excited. And I was like, okay, I get to actually like do this thing that I've like been pushing myself to learn for the last few months, and now I actually get to do it.
Nice.
So
No, that's exciting. And as someone who had started reading and been getting into it, like if this was, one of your first submissions, it's got to be something that validates, the I could do this. The moment where, the thing I like about the Mad Cave Talent Search is it gives creators a safety net, right? That you are learning more about the process, about building the team, all of kind of the fundamentals. And instead of you having to kind of pitch everything, or like go, I'm going to kickstart this book, and then have to learn through, more trial by fire. So I think it creates more rounded creators in the field. Is that something that you would agree with?
yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to be said for having that kind of support when you're starting out. And I think, like, obviously, I don't think I could say that it wasn't a fantastic thing that Man Cave is doing, but I think it really is. And I think that anytime you can get mentoring, if you want to break into comics, there are people who are offering that. Go look for it, find it. I know that like my good friend Christoph Borgart, who has a book at Scout and is doing a bunch of other things which are as yet unannounced, but he's been offering some mentoring, fellow Australian, and he also helped me a lot at the start when I got this Mad Cave thing, just to understand the industry. I think there's a lot of disparate skills that you need to make it in comics. The creative skill is actually probably only about 20% of the entire journey. I think the ability to market your books is often more important than the ability to actually write them, which is kind of depressing, but that's just the way the industry works. And then
Fair.
also the ability to understand the business side of things, which it really helps when you have an editor who's done it before, who is holding your hand the entire time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So for those of the folks in the chat who may have missed the epic trailer for this book. And like I said, if you missed it, go watch it. The link is in the description down below. Don't watch it right now. Watch it when we're done. Make sure you go watch it. Can you give us a quick plot synopsis of what's going on in your world of Nottingham?
So what we're doing is we're basically turning the Robin Hood mythos on its head. And the start of that is we are following not Robin himself, but we're following the Sheriff of Nottingham, who in our story is like a medieval cop, and he's on the trail of a serial killer who is murdering Nottinghamshire's tax collectors. As the story progresses, he finds himself, our sheriff, sort of stuck between the political forces at play. There are a lot of major power brokers who might be familiar names to you, and they're all in this clash. One of the biggest power players of them all is the Merry Men, who stalk the woods in Sherwood Forest, and their leader, a mysterious man known only as Hood.
Nice. And I'll show you all some art when we get to the end of this, because I'll ask some process questions. The other thing that I've learned from interviewing other talent search winners is that you kind of get a brief or an option of storylines to pick from. So how much work, like some people I've talked to just kind of took the pitch that the publisher or that the editor gave and were like, I will follow this and march in the lines. And in some other instances, there was some pushback, there was some give and some take. So in your final product of the 5 issues of Nottingham, how much did you kind of derive from the original brief or like story snippet they wanted you to start with?
The genre. That was it. All I had was basically a noir. I think the original pitch ended up overlapping too much with an existing property, and so all I had was a genre, and I kind of rolled it out from there. Yeah, I had that it was a noir, and I kind of took that and ran with it.
And it didn't even name, or did it say like a Robin Hood crime noir? They just
No.
wanted like a noir style book.
Yeah. So it was sort of I kind of took that, and I was like, I gave them 2 different pitches. One that was kind of more, but what I thought was more in line with what they were thinking, and then Nottingham, and they went with Nottingham. So
that's awesome. And I think you might have, and with Jared in the chat, he can maybe attest to this. You might have the most, like, the biggest sandbox to play in, because everybody else I've talked to, they've gotten something more specific. So to know that they were like, here's your sandbox, and you were like, here are your 2 directions, and they took this one, that's really awesome that your brain is like, I will create like Robin Hood true crime. That I think I like.
Yeah, I look, I think that I kind of was like, I looked for a sandbox, and this one was the one that occurred to me, you know. So it wasn't as if I didn't have the direction, and I take it sort of as a compliment from Mad Cave that they gave me the breadth to do kind of basically what I wanted with it.
Nice.
But I was like, okay, how do I tell a great story that I want to tell, and B, do it in 5 issues? And I thought, well, the easiest way to do that is to have a cast of characters that everybody knows already.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I landed on that, I was like, well, what the other thing I can do is I can surprise people and subvert their expectations and give them those characters in a way they've never seen before. And that was really exciting to me.
Well, I like it. And I never thought I would walk away from any kind of Robin Hood narrative feeling like empathy for the sheriff. But for him to like be just this guy who's trying to solve a murder crime, right? Like he's not the bad guy who's enforcing taxes. Like he doesn't have all of that stigma that he's just trying to figure out why all the tax collectors are getting murdered. And I feel bad watching his interaction with other folks. I think, aside from his disdain for gingers, depending on your feeling about people with red hair, the sheriff is not a big fan. But I think that that's kind of a cool turn, right? That they're all, it's a good way to bring the base in because people are familiar with Robin Hood. And then at the end of this first book, when you're like, I've never felt this way about Robin Hood. I think that really kind of shows the appeal of the property.
Thanks.
The next question I want to ask you, so the two phrases that I kind of used to summarize my take on this was either Robin Hood meets the Spanish Inquisition or Robin Hood meets Red Hood. If you had to describe your book in a similar way, what would your like mashup be?
Mine is probably closer to Robin Hood plus my own cynicism.
The Middle Ages weren't that great. Why is everybody romanticizing?
Yeah, like why does this guy have perfect teeth and perfect hair all the time? No offense to the Taron Egertons of this world, but I'm not sure he would have looked like that.
No.
And I think Shane delivered that particular note pretty handily. But I felt like how could you have this person who is in almost all so some of the takes have him as a commoner who kind of starts this peasant rebellion, but most of them have him as a nobleman who starts it. And I was like, well, why would this person ever start a peasant rebellion? Like, there's people that nice don't exist now. How in the hell would they have existed in the 13th century? Like it just didn't strike me as something that was believable in the slightest. And like, so what does that look like if there's an ulterior motive here? And I won't spoil any more of that because you have to find out through reading the book.
That's a good answer. Hydra Comics, you should definitely pick up this book regardless of what I say about it on Instagram, because this book is insane. And I know the kind of stuff that you like to read because you and I read similar stuff. You will love this. And it's got the Jared stamp of approval. Like, I am pretty well a Mad Cave Studios homer. Like, everything that has come out, I've been like, this is amazing. But it's amazing. Like, this is maybe one of the darkest Mad Cave stories. It's the only Mad Cave tale that kind of plays in an existing sandbox, and I think does a good job kind of reaching out to familiar readers. And I really like the idea that it's me being cynical, critiquing the mythos. That I think that's kind of fun. So I'll show you all some of the images from the book. So if you missed the beginning or haven't seen anybody posting this on social media, there's the cover, there is the hood, and it gives me the nightmares.
It's funny you said that about having it over your face before, because if people go to Instagram, I believe, and search in the Instagram filters Nottingham helmet, you will find a filter for your face that makes you look terrifying.
I'm going to ask you a 12-part question all at once, just so I can do that while you answer. There's one of the posters, and that's the sheriff, and I still like this haunting, like he is still lurking over the town. But like I said, as you read this book, or that it's Robin Hood noir going into it, It's not necessarily in a negative context. So you saw some of these images in the trailer, but here we see one of the phrases that I want to ask you about. So we hear everybody kind of talk about, we take from the rich and we give to the poor, and that's something that still shows up in this in your version of the Robin Hood mythos. But here we see this idea is England is sick, we are the cure. Are the merry men like a cult now? Like, are they buying into the idea of the hood?
Like, that's absolutely where we're at here. I think that ideology has the potential to be very, very dangerous. And if the events of the last few weeks haven't taught you that, you've not really been paying attention. And I think that there's certainly the narrative that is portrayed by the Merry Men isn't necessary. It can't necessarily be the whole truth of it all. And that's, I think, links back to my comments about how I was cynical in the first place. And I kind of ran with that idea. How could this "we steal from the rich, we give to the poor" ideology be dangerous? And the answer is, firstly, when it radicalizes people, and secondly, when it isn't actually the full truth of the matter. There's certainly a real weird situation going on where it feels weird to be writing a Robin Hood comic at the moment. Like, I posted about this on Twitter, but it's interesting to see how eagerly people are like, the rich should be throwing themselves off buildings. I'm like, whoa. Like, there's a difference between theoretically thinking eat the rich and actually encouraging them to do horrible things.
Well, I think I agree with writing or reading this in the given political climate. Like, the day before the U.S. Capitol insurrection, I read Jonathan Hedrick's The Recount from Scout Comics, which, if
Timing.
you haven't, that I was like, does this motherfucker has a crystal ball? Like, it's like, who's about to get shot in this insurrection? So I could see you never thought that this would have a keen sense of timing, but it does. But like, here's more of the notion of the ideology that the sickness is traitors, fornicators, and infidels. So this was one of the panels that we talked about where you were concerned that I was going to show the men thinking with your cocks, and I led into this.
My concern was that this nobody's seen this yet, but
well,
I mean,
yeah,
yay.
You said it was okay.
It's okay. It's fine.
And it's out of context. So
yeah.
Here we see a good meeting with. Tag yourself. I'm fornicator.
Aren't we all?
Nice.
Aren't we all?
So in terms of looking at the interaction with Miriam and the sheriff, can you give us a little bit of context to what's going on here? Like, why is he pursuing her? And usually we see Miriam in other versions as someone who is more passive in the face of authority. Like, she plays the nobility game very, very well. But then it's behind closed doors, right? She is the love-struck insurrectionist. So you see that she's very strong and assertive here. What made you kind of want to create this character dynamic?
Well, when you only have, like, one really standout female character from the mythos, first of all, you don't want to make them forgettable. Second of all, there's a certain, anybody who's familiar with the noir genre will know that the standout female role is always the femme fatale. And I was like, well, she just has to be the femme fatale of this story. and that makes her way more interesting than someone who has to constantly be rescued. And here she is. She does. This is the thing. She does play the game of nobility very well here. For context, I think that it's not sort of. I'm not revealing too much by saying that she is very much out of luck when the book starts. Her father did some bad things, which left her alone and in a precarious financial situation. And so she kind of has to interact on a bunch of different social axes in order to try to get what she wants. Whether or not she succeeds is, I'll leave it up to you. But she interacts on the level of other nobility, and she also interacts in a number of other different ways. And that part, I think, was inspired by, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you'll see that if a man commits a crime in that universe, they have the option to go to the Night's Watch. Women don't. In fact, for the most part, the legal system doesn't really see women in that world, and so often, like for example, in the case of say Arya or name just completely Brienne.
I'm bad.
Arya or Brienne.
Episodes. There you go. I've seen very minimal Game of Thrones because we had it when our first kid, or it came out when our first kid was born, and we tried to binge it. It was like, there are too many names.
Anyway, Arya and Brienne are the two characters who kind of go unseen by the law and, in effect, have to interact on the axis of men in order to kind of be seen and sort of exert power. And so I drew a lot from that in order to kind of sort of synthesize a Marion who was not at all passive. She's very active in pursuing what she wants.
Yeah, I think that's a good take both on women and their interaction with the law for a large chunk of history. But I think that's a good way to kind of flip the character. Clicked on the wrong button. We looked at poetic stabbing, poetic grabbing of the junk. So I'm really compelled by some of the action sequences, and y'all are seeing one here out of context. So here's where I want to ask a question about Shane and Luca, the artist and the colorist. I know that when, some people write comic book scripts, they offer very vivid descriptions, almost like stage directions from a play script to the artist and the colorist. And all of these action sequences are just compelling, from the stabbings at the beginning to this. So how much instruction did you give to Shane Volk and Luca Romano versus how much of this is their interpretation of like your description of like, here's what I want to see in a sword fight?
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of Luca's stuff, he just kind of did his thing, and I didn't have reason to give a lot of like color notes in the script. I don't think in this, as opposed to Shane, who just literally like took what I had put on the page and brought it to life. I think that the way I think about comics personally, I don't know, not everybody writes like this, but I do. Whereas while I put on the script and said to Shane, like, feel free to change what you want, I also like to choreograph shots, and also I really try to think heavily about page layouts, because I think that helps me sort of arrange the ideas and the flow of the page in my script too. And I'm not wedded to those things, but that's how I think about comics. So particularly with the fight scenes, I literally I have a a replica sword sitting on my shelf, like over there. You can't see it. I would literally like physically try to act those out so that we like each fight scene felt unique, and B, it felt realistic and not just me kind of throwing words into the wind and Shane having to come up with the action all on his own.
Well, I think that's fair. That makes a lot of sense, right? That if you want to describe the mechanics of a fight, like it seems like a good marriage of Shane's interpretation and your kind of direction, or I kind of want to see you grab your replica sword and just kind of air a sword fight. But maybe we'll do that, if you come back when some of the later issues come out. Or I can interview you in the morning for me, and it will be late for you. That way you can have a drink or two and get in full
that would be bad. That would cause an injury.
Fair. Yeah, don't drink with knives.
But yeah, I think you'll probably want to chat about that stuff when you see issue 5. So
yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
And then the last image that I wanted to show, and while you were answering one of the questions, I don't know if you saw me take a grinning selfie, but I found the red hood filter, or the hood filter, and it's in my Instagram story, and I'll share it with on Twitter and Instagram with the instructions on how to find it, because it was creepy seeing me wearing that head. But I think that's a brilliant marketing idea. Like, I'll kind of ask a similar question to the previous one. How much did you describe what you wanted the Hood's mask to look like versus how much is this Shane's interpretation?
This is well and truly Shane's interpretation. I didn't do a whole lot of describing, other than I looked up what a mask in the 12th century of this kind would look like, and I sent it to him. I was like, give it a creepy smile, and maybe like visually reference like a Guy Fawkes mask, and he just went nuts with it, and like, this is very cool.
I like that marriage of two things. And like, if it was, I get the Guy Fawkes mask from, right, the very pointed chin, the eyebrows, and the mustache, but this is just like I said earlier, when I saw it fake on my face when I put the cover up, like, this is nightmare fuel. But then this is also donned by the Hood himself and all of the merry men, right? They all wear that mask, that it's a dark side is kind of thing, right? That the Hood is a reference to one person in particular, but you never, in theory, the law never knows who it is. By the end of the book, we know what the Hood looks like versus other depictions that we see of the poetic stabbings. And that's what I think makes it intriguing, right? That we know that the Hood is being pursued. By the end, we know who the true Hood is. So at some point, right, these two ideas are going to have to clash in the middle. And I think that's what makes it fun for the reader in a true noir style, right? Because I'll get my bulletin board out and all of my cutout pictures and yarn conspiracy theory things, right? And
yes,
the 12th century version of that. But I think that's particularly cool, and it makes it particularly powerful. And just like, the darkness of this is so good compared to a lot of the other Mad Cave titles, right? Like, we get a little bit of darkness we get a lot of bit of darkness in like Midnight Task Force. We get a lot of bit of biblical darkness in Knights of the Golden Sun, but then everything else is kind of darkness at a personal level, dealing with one kind of tragedy. And this is Robin Hood and his merry men poetically stab the shit out of each other, because England is sick and we are the cure. And I think just flipping it on its head and making me like the sheriff but be wary of Robin Hood and his merry men it's just a brilliant take that would not have thought of. And while Jared says that you are the most handsome Australian, Stoney Williams, also a talent search winner from the class of 2018, says you're dapper. And Stoney, I said I would wear your shirt today.
America's sweetheart, Stoney Williams. It's the truth. What a beard and what a man, you know?
Yeah. I think if, I've been on several streams either interviewing Stoney, chatting with Stoney, or playing D&D with Stoney, and just the amount of beard brushing that happens. He lives about 2.5, 3 hours away from me, that I think if he combed or brushed his beard enough that it could stretch to my house. So if there's ever just weird hair kind of crawling through my backyard, I know it's Stoney's beard, and I'll latch on for a
like
magical
Medusa, but from the other side of the face.
So the last question I want to ask you, and you've seen this scrolling across the bottom the whole time. Nottingham #1 releases on March 3rd, which means final order cutoff is going to be on February 3rd. So you've got about 6 days to reach out to your LCS and pre-order it. On Mad Cave's website, you can pre-order issue #1, but if you want to get issues individually, you're going to have to make 5 separate orders. That's what their website says. So sucks a little bit, but if you want them on time instead of waiting and me going, fuck, this is amazing, and then you have to wait until, the summer to be able to read all 5 at once, like, order this book through your LCS.
Yeah, the other thing is not to be that guy, but I know that the first issue of Jared's book sold out, the first issue of Stoney's book sold out. You don't want to be that person. And plus, and again, not to toot my own horn, because I'm tooting Shane and Lucas' horn instead. The covers are phenomenal. Yeah. Like, they're just so good. You saw them briefly in the trailer, at the end of the trailer, if you want to have a little peek. That's I'm
gonna pull it up on YouTube and share it that way, so I can pull to just the covers. But yeah, if the covers for each of them are an indication of every individual chapter, like, I am peeing my pants with glee on how good it's gonna look. So join Hood and the Merrymen, poetic stabbing. Whoops, I gotta stop it and then start it again. And I want to share this tab. So yeah, if you want a taste of these later covers, there's what all 5 of them look like. You can kind of track the story's progression there. But some of the, I like the Dryfoot #1 cover, which I still need to send Jared a message about because I only have the art copy of it. I love #1 of Villainous, but Jared, if Jared and Dryfoot got a Scarface homage, Stoney got a different version of Tilly, and then I now have 3 versions of the one that looks like Punchline from Batman 92. I want to see what the second printing of Nottingham 1 looks like, because that shit's gonna have to be insane.
Yeah, I mean, that is in your hands, dear viewers. Make it happen, and so I can beg Shane to give me the original art for it.
Yeah, and
I've been begging him over #3, the cover for #3. No luck so far.
Oh, see, that's one of the things that I want to be able to see if I can get in my life is an original cover sketch. So maybe you and I can battle Shane. Because I know if I sweet talk Luca, like I just have to tweet enough about how much I love colors. And, I know I'm not as attractive as the staff of Pulp 616, but I know if he and if I could get invited to Italy for pizza, then maybe I could get him to color something for me. The last question I want to ask you, and then I'll let you go, because if y'all haven't heard, it's almost 3:00 for him in Australia, and he probably still has some official I'm a lawyer work to do.
Just a little bit.
I love to ask random pop culture questions at the end. So the question that I've got for you, David, being that you are playing in a sandbox, in a Robin Hood world that has been interpreted and viewed in a couple of different ways, what is your favorite Robin Hood adaptation?
So when I was in high school, I was absolutely and totally obsessed with the BBC TV show. Like 2 perfect seasons and a 3rd season which wasn't so great, but I think that show was ahead of its time in terms of the way it told stories. I think it was about like a decade ahead of its time, and if someone tried to do it now, it would be phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think that show's just fantastic.
My answer to that question, and here's where maybe it explains how much I enjoy it, is the Disney Robin Hood.
I respect that.
Every time I think Robin Hood, I just get the tune that the rooster kind of whistles throughout the opening credits. So just imagine me reading everybody getting stabbed in the first 2 pages of the book, and then thinking, I can't whistle because I got bad teeth. But yeah, I like it. Can anything top Kevin Costner? Yes, Disney and the BBC. Checkmate. All right. Based
also,
on
Men in Tights is a pretty good answer too.
Yeah. I thought you said Abe Lincoln. Oh, I love that. That's a good one. All right. So normally we're mostly positive, but on my channel, unless we're making fun of how bad Nick Spencer has destroyed Spider-Man, there have been some not so great adaptations of Robin Hood. I like how I want to ask a serious question, and now Jared knocked me off once, Stoney got me on the other one. Yes, that is precisely what happened. That's why I don't understand why my wife bleeds every now and then. Like, it is magical how I have 3 children and she is upset because her body is waging war against her. So topping that, do you have a least favorite Robin Hood adaptation?
Well, I gotta say this Taron Egerton one is pretty damn bad. Like, objectively a beautiful man, but you can't save a shitty script with this.
Yeah. When you name dropped him earlier, I was like, I know the answer. I agree with you on that one. And the movie Sing, the children's movie with all of the singing animals, has ruined Taron Egerton for me because he is Johnny the gorilla, and he sings an Elton John song in there, which made him perfect for Rocket Man. But if I'm watching him in like The Kingsman, and all of a sudden I get him like singing "I'm Still Standing," it ruined it for me.
And also, how did we end up on anthropomorphized animals twice today?
Yeah, because I have a 5-year-old, an almost 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, so I live in the world of manimals. All right.
Yeah, I think I'm referring to Stoney's comment as well.
Oh, being a furry. I still think you might be, and maybe once all 37 of the children that live in your Oklahoma home are gone, then maybe you get to go through the furry phase. So I swapped places so I could make you bigger than me. So it's been an hour. I would like to free you to be a lawyer and deal with the rest of your day. So do you have anything else in the works? Anything else we can look out for you doing, or is it just dig in on Nottingham?
Well, like Nottingham, we've got like 5 issues in a trade, so that's a good like half of the year, just over half of the year. So definitely Nottingham. Digging on that, but also it's hard to not say anything and still say something. But there will be a Kickstarter at the end of the year. But I can't say anything about it now other than that it exists.
All right. Can we pinky promise like this through the camera? Everybody knows that I'm a Kickstarter whore. So when it comes out, can we chat again?
Yes, absolutely. We can chat again.
The other thing I'll ask you, you mentioned that you're doing some work through an Australian publisher or have done work with an Australian publisher. Can you mention it? And I'll see if I can find it where there's a good way that folks can find it digitally or...
No. So that's also in the works and can't really say much more.
So I'm going to Twitter stalk you some more then.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should Twitter stalk me. I don't know how to... Yeah. There we go. There it is. I'm really bad with this reverse thing, but I can follow it across the screen if you...
Me too. And you think I would be able to handle it since I am in Zoom classes all day with students and it's still like, nope, that I don't know where I'm pointing. Or when I record videos, I just point the wrong way all the time. So I can relate to you there. But I will tell you that I genuinely love the book. That I think in terms of looking at what you and Shane have put together in terms of script and art, and then what Luca adds with the colors, and I forgot the letter's name.
Jermette Gill.
Jermette Gill. It is a very good book, and I've never heard anybody say anything mean about Chris Fernandez. So if you've got any dirt you want to drop on him,
I have nothing. Just intensely lovely. Him and Brian too.
Yeah, I got to chat with Brian about one of his Kickstarters for Don't Ever Blink, and I'm super excited for Black Cotton. That, like, I think this is the perfect crew assembled to flip the Robin Hood mythos on its head. And this is a book that I think everybody, like, I'm not a big, like, you should spec on this book, like, because it will sell a cajillion copies. But I think this is going to be a book that people talk about because we don't see Dark Robin Hood. We've never seen Dark Robin Hood. And even if I can put two tropes together, I still think David's summary of it's Robin Hood plus his own cynicism is the best way to think about this book. That, we talk about how these are not stories, everybody takes a trope and makes it their own, right? This is truly a story that I don't think anybody has told before. And I think you are ridiculously creative with it. And Stoney wants to know, is it really a Matt Cave book if Justin Birch doesn't do it?
Yes, it is, as it turns out. Also, we have I would not ever describe her as Jermette Gill. I would describe her as Eisner Award winner Jermette Gill. So we've been very lucky, and I'm really excited for you guys to see this.
I am too, and I'll scroll the diamond code one more time, but walk into your show or your shop, log into, if your shop uses the diamond portal, search Nottingham. If your shop uses League of Comic Geeks, search for Nottingham. If your shop, doesn't do a pull list, but you walk in and go order copies of Nottingham, this is going to be a book you don't want to miss out on, because it is like I said, everybody likes a Robin Hood tale. We have all read it, seen it, watched it. We have not seen Dark Robin Hood, and I think that makes it a lot of fun. So I'll make you bigger than me one more time. You have anything else you want to say before I free you into the wild?
No, I think you've said it all. Other than thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. All right. Then I'm going to bounce you to the background real quick. I'm going to talk about 2 other things. And if you want to chat, we can chat. If not, you go do lawyer stuff. And
Okay.
I'm still envious that you have a Showcase 2.0 shirt that I've been on the hunt for one, but no luck. But David, I hope this book ridiculously sells out. I hope we see multiple printings of multiple books because it's so fucking good.
Thank you.
All right. So that's that. You all have heard me be excited about all kinds of different books. But like I said, as I kind of have started enjoying more horror stuff because my wife doesn't like scary things because she's afraid that I or a child will walk into the room at the middle of the night and murder, stab. I get it through comics, and I really like this interpretation of Nottingham. It's a large degree of fun. At the beginning of the show, I plugged my 750 subscriber giveaway that I'm giving away at least 1 copy of Hotel #1 in a 9.2 if I can get to 750 subscribers by the 16th, because I'm going to be high on painkillers that day because, David talked about how nobody could have a good smile like Robin Hood does in the Middle Ages. I have Middle Ages teeth, and I'm getting them all pulled and replaced on that day, and I would like to celebrate it by recording myself high on painkillers and anxiety medicine because I'm fucking terrified of the dentist, and going, thank you, everybody. So there's a video on my page where you can do that. The other thing that I tweeted out multiple times today, I'm going to take every name from somebody who appeared in tonight's chat, and I'm going to run the rigged giveaway wheel. And I will give away 2 copies of Nottingham #1 when it releases that I've ordered several from my main LCS. I think I've ordered 6 or 7 copies total from all of the shops that I go to. So I'll probably give out more when Comic Book This or That starts and all of that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about that next week. But I hope you all check out this book. I hope you all check out David Short on his website, because it is the most emotionally moved I have been by 4 pages of anything in the world, and it gets us to the phrase poetic stabbing. The last thing that I want to shout out really fast, and I'm still kind of scrolling to find where Hydra dropped it. There it is. So if you are into indie comics and you want to watch people kind of highlight and talk about all kinds of things, tonight is the 2nd episode of the Indie Comics Show over on Hydra's channel, and there's the link. Last week, we were supposed to talk about Ice Cream Man #1, but we really talked about what indies are to us and then had a long debate about whether or not Image Comics are indie comics, and that kind of came to a tie. But for the 2nd week in a row, we're talking about an Image book again, and I'm going to try and change that, and we've got plans in the future. But if you want to hear a bunch of folks talk about the book Revival, which I haven't read until today, and holy undead, like zombies, crazy shit, that's the kind of book that I like. Oh, Kumi says I've got 666. I am the devil. That's probably not something I want to say, but I'll embrace it. But you can come check us out over there. I'll be live again next Thursday night. I don't have an interview lined up as of yet, but right now my plan is to talk about season 2 of Comic Book This or That, and maybe update you all on my Grail list, which also dropped today as well. So I don't think I have anything else, and I'm talking myself into a circle. So I'll end this in the exact same way that I end all of my videos. As always, thanks for stopping by, and have a good one.
Hey, little girl, did